Hello all, this is Anwy, and you are listening or watching to the Bible reading series. This will be Genesis 13, King James Version. If you have not watched the first video, please do so for the disclaimer, and we will proceed. Starting with Matthew 6, 9 through 13, King James Version. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Genesis 13, King James Version. Header is Abram and Lot. And hopefully this will be a short one for today, but we'll see. All right. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ahi, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art now northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. So, starting out, we see Abram leaving once again from Egypt, from the earlier chapter 12, where he did some things wrong to the Pharaoh, but he was assumably forced into that by a famine. So he's now returning to the land of Canaan. We'll see this multiple times. He was very rich with cattle and silver. So he went on his journey from the south even to Bethel, which is the house of the Lord, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning. So he's returning exactly where he was, between Bethel and Ahi, which, if you're wondering, I'm pronouncing it that way because phonetically in the Strongs it says Ahi. But this place, if you didn't listen to chapter 12 before this, is also known as a heap of ruins, this word here. A city lying east of Bethel. So this is the direction in which Lot is going. I guess in my head it's kind of ironic that he goes there and then later on what happens to him. Now, I can't decipher whether this is a specific city or if this is an area, but that's just the name of it, so no sense in really making like a very pointed observation on it. And if you're wondering how I'm I keep on referencing Bethel as or Bethel to the house of the Lord is because if you separate the word into Bet, which is the earth, the first part, and El, the second part, it is house, and then Lord. So house of the Lord. So we see another journey. Abram is making more journeys and somehow becoming richer and richer. Instead of sitting there and, building things up, he's actually gaining, notoriety and also wealth by doing so. There was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. So we have the Canaanites living here. We have this other new people, but I'll explain here in a second. But Lot and Abram now have trouble between their herdsmen because they're so great and the land cannot provide for them, supposedly. This word here, instead of the Canaanites, let's move down to, and the Perizzites. Let's see. Perizzi belong to a village. So what I guess I'm understanding that as, and maybe misunderstanding, but it's a tribesman. They're not a people like Canaan where they have cities, and they're just maybe more kind of similar to what Abram's doing right now. They're just intense. They're just villages. They're not developed as well as maybe the Canaanites, is how I'm reading that. So it's not technically a people per se, but it is a people of individuals who live in a different manner than the Canaanites, but they're still in the land. So this moment comes, and Abram says, okay, guys, how about this? Lot, you choose which way you go, and I'll just go the opposite way. And we'll create distance between our clansmen, if you will, and that will stop the infighting. So Lot here looks, across the land, and he notices that the land off to the east is plentiful. There's many rivers, and so he goes that direction. And Abram, honoring his word, goes west. And then we see the Lord speaks to Abram after Lot separates with him, and he says, look, in all directions, essentially, all cardinal directions, and this land will be yours. This is another promise from God to Abram. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. So this is the promise of God to Abram that a lot of things are predicated on. And then he says, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. And the statement is essentially to say, you will never be able to count the amount of people that will come from you. I promise that. Even though at this moment, Abram himself and Sarai can't have kids. She's physically barren, and there is a potential that Abram himself is unable to produce, offspring, and that then means Sarai cannot. Either way, it doesn't matter. We find out later, I believe, that, it is Sarai through another story. We'll get to that shortly. Anywho, it's not the point of this. Even though you do not have kids right now, and the infighting, we'll see from the rabbi's, commentary, is partially because he doesn't have children. So he's almost being made fun of because he doesn't have kids. The people are quarreling because of it, and all these things. So all this trouble's happening, and then there's the Lord going, "I'm going to make you. I'm going to make you a people. I'm. Your generations are going to be big." And we have to see the faith in this. Is what I'm trying to say. Is Abram has hope in the Lord in this moment. All right, not to confuse hope and faith, but I believe that at this point, Abram is hoping, but also is faithful, or has faith in the Lord's faithfulness. Is what I'm attempting to say. So Short verse. We'll get to the commentary, maybe a little longer, but and Abram came up to the south, so to come to the south of the land of Israel. So they're coming up from Egypt into the southern part of the land promised from God to Abram, continually traveling southward to Mount Moriah, and in every case, when one goes from Egypt to the land of Canaan, he goes from south to north. So it's an obvious course. Like, this isn't a misstatement. He's not, in the south going to the south. He's going from one place to the south of another place. Abram was very heavy with cattle, with silver, and with gold, so laden with burdens. He had much with him. Interesting way to put that, in my opinion, because it's going to ask, where did he get that? Where did this cattle and silver and gold come from? If you go back to the chapter prior to this, it was Pharaoh. Pharaoh gave him this. So he's now burdened with some of the things that Pharaoh gave him, and previously when he came from, not Hebron, the land from Terah, his father, the land that Terah is occupying now is his father. He was also with people. He had people with him there. So through this whole course, he's garnered more and more. And he went on his journey. So from the south and till Bethel. So notice how in this text it separates the two words between Bethel and between Ahi, right? And so he's somewhere in between those two, and lodged. He went and lodged in the inns where he had lodged on his way to Egypt. This teaches you etiquette, that a person should not change his lodgings. Very strange. I guess there's something seen from their cultural bit here that I'm not seeing, but hey. So essentially, there's an etiquette piece that's being taught here that says if you've stayed at a place, you should probably stay at that place again to honor those people that, if they've taken care of you well in the past. So to the place of the altar that he had made at first. If you remember, Abram had made an altar in which he called that place Bethel, the house of the Lord. And also Lot, who went with Abram, had flocks, cattle, and tents. So this entire time, Lot, his, nephew, was with him the whole time. Cattle and all, flocks and all, family and all. And so the land did not bear them, meaning there was not enough pasture for their cattle. And this is an abbreviated expression, and an additional word is needed. So there's more to be said here, but essentially that the land itself was unable to provide for all that there was. There was just so much. And there was a quarrel between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle, between the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. So here it presents a concept. Since Lot's herdsmen were wicked, so there's an assumption here that I don't see, but they're assuming since Lot's herdsmen were wicked and they pastured their animals in fields belonging to others, Abram's herdsmen rebuked them from committing robbery. This is where we're seeing another moment of ill-gotten gain, but they responded, "The land was given to Abram, who has no heir." So they're in this story, they're mocking him, and in this understanding, they're mocking Abram for not having an heir and saying we can do whatever we want and we can take whatever we want because he has no heir to claim this. So Lot will inherit him, and therefore this is not robbery. So they're assuming the future. They're assuming what will happen in the future when Abram dies, and Lot will definitely have children, which we're gonna revisit that, I think, if my brain remembers it, and what happens to Lot and his family. So this statement here, if true, is ironic in my opinion. And if you know the story, it comes to Lot and his daughters. But like I said, we'll get to there. But Scripture states, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites were then dwelling in the land, and Abram had not yet been awarded its possession. So the promise was there, but it hadn't come to fruition yet. So that's another bit to it. So, kinsmen here, for we are all kinsmen. I don't know if the King James Version uses a different word here. Brethren. Yes, so thy herdmen, for we be brethren. But here it's meaning relatives according to the Midrash, and they resembled each other in their facial features. So that's a little bit of a difference in the reading here, which kind of gives a little bit more context between Abram and Lot. They resembled each other, but they were also family, and so on and so forth. And they're not technically brothers in the most strict sense, if I remember correctly, because I'm pretty sure Lot was beget by Abram's brother. If you go left, I will go right. So wherever you dwell, I will not distance myself from you. I will stand by you as a protector and helper, and he ultimately needed him. So we'll see in the future that Abram comes to the aid of Lot. So essentially he's saying, let's stop the quarreling here. I want the best for both of us, and I want to put myself in a place where if you need me, I will be there for you. So a very respectful thing. And this here is a grammatical thing. It says, I will go right, and it means I will go towards the right. So he goes left, or he goes east, and I will go towards the west, is kind of how that's turning out to be. So Lot raised his eyes. So he's viewing this land, the entire plain of Jordan, and he's noticing these things, that it was entirely watered, a land with streams of water, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. That plain was the following: like the garden of the Lord, growing with trees, like the land of Egypt for growing seeds, as you come to Zor. So this is moving to another statement. Zor is an interesting place if you look into the interlinear here. Oh, it is now reacting crazy to me. Maybe it was too fast. Zor here is one of the 5 lands. So Zor, meaning insignificance, it's associated with Sodom and Gomorrah. It's one that we don't talk about very often. A city at the southeast end of the Dead Sea, grouped with Sodom and Gomorrah as being one of the 5 cities slated for destruction by God, spared at Lot's plea as his place of refuge. So Zor is to the south towards Egypt, which they came through to get to where they're being. That kind of that earlier to the south part is they came up out of Egypt to the southerly place, which would have been Zor. And Lot chose for himself the entire plain of Jordan, and Lot traveled from the east, and they parted from one another. So Lot goes into the plains, and Abram goes the opposite direction, as he said. And he pitched his tent. He pitched tents for his herdsmen and cattle until Sodom. And the people of Sodom were evil. So here, see how it phrases it here. 13. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. So, and the people of Sodom were evil and sinful against the Lord. So a little bit of different phrasing, similar meaning. Nevertheless, Lot did not hesitate to sojourn with them. So he went to them in a man. Remember, this is one of those common words that are going to come up multiple times. Lot went out of his own land into another land, and learned from here that the name of the wicked shall rot. So I believe that's Proverbs 10:7. The mention of a righteous man is for a blessing, but the name of the wicked shall rot. Evil. So here, it's giving context to what it means by evil and by sinful. So evil with their bodies and sinful with their money. This is personally an important thing. I think a lot of the times is we have options of where we should put our money, and we should be concerned about where it goes. Won't get too much into that because I don't think that that's for here. Very against the Lord. So we're very evil and sinful against the Lord. They recognized their master and intended to rebel against him. So they knew who their master was, and yet they intended to rebel, like Nimrod. And the Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, "Please raise your eyes and see from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward." After Lot had parted. As long as the wicked man was with him, the divine speech withdrew from him. So this is how they're seeing that it wasn't until Lot, a wicked man, left that the Lord came and spoke to Abram. So I guess we could learn here, and the Lord appeared to Abram. We must assume that at the time he was righteous, and this is easy to understand. I guess at the time. So for us, maybe it is wise to depart for a time, because it's not like Abram wasn't in a place where he could go and meet with Lot, but to distance himself is what's kind of coming out of that. And I'll make your seed like the dust of the earth, so that if a man will be able to count the dust of the earth, so will your seed be counted. So this is saying that if a man will be able, just as it is impossible for the dust to be counted, so will your seed not be counted. So it's a bit of a rhetorical statement. And Abram pitched his tents, and he came, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So the name of a man, this last bit, this is saying that it is a man in whom he is speaking of, the plane of this individual, not a place, a people, but a person. And if we go here and we look at the interlinear, we can see, past it, there it is, Mamre, or Mamre. That name means strength or fatness. An Amorite who allied himself with Abram. So we can see that, he's going to an ally, a soon-to-be ally. A proper locative noun, an oak grove on Mamre's land in Palestine, where Abraham dwelt, a place near Abraham's burial place, apparently identified with Hebron. So this person here becomes consequential to Abram, soon to be Abraham. So that ends chapter 13. It was a nice short one. Hopefully that blesses you. Like I say, it definitely blesses me. I can see it directly in a difference in my life. But thank you for listening all the way through to the end, and I will see you next time.